The sirens had already faded by the time Marcus Cole stepped out of his car. His front yard was a crime scene, police tape strung across his porch like a cruel joke, lights flashing red and blue against the shattered windows. Paramedics rushed past him, a stretcher between them, and on it, Ela, his wife, motionless, pale, her blouse soaked through with blood. In her arms was their baby girl, Zora, wailing, screaming as only infants do when they sense something is terribly wrong. Marcus didn't speak. He didn't cry. He didn't even blink. He just stood there, arms stiff at his sides, jaw clenched so hard it ached. One of the officers tried to stop him. Marcus didn't even look at him. He stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, and when he finally spoke, his voice was like ice cutting through fire. "You shot my wife while she was holding our daughter." Marcus Cole wasn't the kind of man you noticed in a crowd, unless you knew what to look for. Tall, broad-shouldered, eyes that had seen more than a lifetime's worth of violence, and a stillness about him that made even loud rooms feel quiet when he entered. At 38, his face carried the calm weight of a man who'd spent nearly 2 decades in America's most secretive military units. His call sign was Ghostmaker, a man who trained others to disappear into darkness and do what most couldn't imagine. He came back to Westbrook not looking for a fight, but for peace. A worn duffel bag in one hand, a folded American flag in the other, and a heart still carrying battlefield ghosts. All he wanted was a quiet life with Ela, the woman who'd waited patiently through every tour, every mission, every night when he didn't call. And with her, their daughter, Zora, only 6 months old, who'd only seen her father through a glowing screen. When he stepped out of the cab that July morning, the old town looked smaller somehow. Familiar, but not the same. He stood on the porch of their modest home, looking up at the sagging American flag above the door. This was supposed to be home now, a second chance. He thought he'd left the war behind, but the war hadn't left him, and soon he'd find out. Westbrook wasn't just broken, it was dangerous, and it was watching him already. Westbrook wasn't the town Marcus remembered. It wore a new face. Cleaner storefronts in the white neighborhoods, high-end cafes popping up like mushrooms after rain. But the east side, where he grew up, told a different story. Cracked sidewalks, rusting streetlights, and police cruisers stationed like sentinels on every corner. The kind of place where you don't wave at officers. You brace for them. Ela had warned him, gently but firmly. "They're not the same police you remember," she said. Working as a doctor at the community clinic, she saw it all firsthand. Bruised ribs, swollen faces, young men too scared to file complaints. "They always say the same thing," she whispered one night. "They fell, or they resisted." Marcus didn't need a report to understand. He'd seen the same patterns overseas, in places where power went unchecked and fear kept order. Even in broad daylight, Marcus felt eyes on him. Patrol cars would slow when he walked Zora in her stroller. Strangers crossed the street to avoid him. He wasn't Marcus Cole, the decorated soldier. He was just a black man in a place that no longer saw his uniform, only his skin. And underneath it all, the tension simmered, quiet but constant. Something in Westbrook was broken, and it wasn't just the pavement. It started with shattered glass. Marcus got the call just after dawn. Someone had broken every window of Ela's clinic. He drove there in silence, jaw clenched, fists like stone on the steering wheel. Spray paint still dripped from the brick walls. Slurs, threats, warnings scrawled in red and black. "Race traitor. Know your place." The words weren't just ugly, they were deliberate. Ela stood in the middle of the wreckage, clipboard in hand, already directing cleanup like a battlefield medic. Her face was calm, but Marcus could see it. Her hands trembled when she thought no one was looking. "Cameras caught nothing," she said flatly. All 5 went out at the same time. Not a single frame. Just static. He checked the wiring himself. Clean cuts. Professional work. This wasn't random vandalism. It was a message. One that came after she'd spoken at the last city council meeting, calling out the department's abuse and demanding oversight. That night, Marcus installed security cameras around their home, ones with backup power and remote access. He started giving Ela self-defense lessons in the kitchen, even though she teased him about it. But neither of them said what they both knew. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. It was a quiet Tuesday evening. Marcus had just finished a job interview in a nearby city and was driving home when Illa called. Her voice was steady, but tight. There's a car parked across the street, tinted windows. It's been there for hours. He felt the shift in his chest, the instincts from war rising like smoke. Stay away from the windows. Lock everything. I'll be home in 30. She'd already called the police an hour earlier. They said they'd send someone to drive by. No one came. Unbeknownst to them, a 911 call had come through minutes after Marcus hung up. A disguised voice claimed a man was waving a gun at the Cole residence. No verification, no warning, just a decision, and then action. Detective James Whitaker volunteered to lead the response. 4 officers arrived in silence. No sirens, no knock. They kicked in the front door with a battering ram. Body cams down for maintenance. Lights off. Guns drawn. Illa was upstairs in the nursery, holding Zora and reading her a bedtime story. She heard the crash. Instinctively, she placed her daughter in the crib and reached for her phone. She never got the chance to dial. 2 officers stormed the hallway, shadows in the dark. No warnings, no commands. 3 shots. Marcus pulled up 17 minutes later and saw chaos. Cruisers, flashing lights, a crowd forming. He ran past the tape, shouting for his wife, for his child. An officer tried to stop him, but he shoved through. He reached the ambulance just as they loaded her body. Blood soaked her blouse. Detective Whitaker emerged from the house, holding Zora awkwardly, the baby screaming. She didn't comply, he said flatly. We thought she had a weapon. Marcus stared at the man. She was holding a baby bottle. The press release came 48 hours later. The department called the shooting regrettable, but justified. Officers had responded to a credible threat, it said. The suspect, Marcus's wife, had failed to comply with commands. Body cameras, unfortunately, had malfunctioned during a scheduled software update. There would be no charges. Marcus sat in the hospital chapel with Zora in his arms, numb, silent, watching the light fade through stained glass. The same system he had spent nearly 2 decades defending had taken everything from him in a matter of minutes. And now it was erasing the truth, piece by piece. He attended the internal review board meetings in pressed shirts and calm tones, presenting facts like a soldier giving a mission report. The responses were cold, rehearsed. They spoke of protocol, procedure, and tragic misunderstandings. But Marcus saw what they really were, stone walls. The anger didn't explode. It hardened, like steel in fire. I trained men to move silently through war zone, he would later say, to gather intelligence, to dismantle corruption from the inside. They should have known better. The uniform was gone, but the mission had just begun, because Marcus Cole didn't bury his wife that week. He buried his fear. Marcus didn't start with rage. He started with structure. That's how he'd always operated. Gather intelligence, identify targets, act with precision. He went through Illa's office late one night, looking for bills or insurance forms. What he found instead changed everything. A small USB drive had fallen from a folder tucked in the back of her desk. On it were videos, voice memos, clinic reports, dates, injuries, names. Illa had been documenting everything. Beatings, intimidation, racial profiling. She'd built a case, quietly, thoroughly, to protect Marcus from retaliation, to protect her community from silence. That night he made 2 calls. The first was to Rodriguez, an old protege from Kandahar, now quietly working private security in Houston. The second to Chen, a surveillance expert who owed Marcus her life from an op gone wrong in the Philippines. Within a week, the team was assembled in a rented warehouse just outside town. No uniforms, no rank, just loyalty. Rodriguez handled logistics. Chen tapped into city surveillance systems. Jackson, stealth specialist, mapped out key facilities. They moved like ghosts, just as Marcus had taught them. In 2 weeks, they had footage of Detective Whitaker entering the evidence room at 2:17 a.m. every Thursday, when the night supervisor took his break. One night, they caught him placing an unlogged firearm into a box marked Cole Residence, the same weapon police later claimed Illa had brandished. The corruption wasn't careless, It was methodical, and now Marcus was matching them, step for step. He wasn't seeking revenge, not yet. He was building a case, because Ela had believed in the law, and Marcus was going to use it like a blade. Word started to spread, quietly at first, like whispers through tall grass. People who once crossed the street to avoid Marcus now stopped him in grocery aisles. A mother handed him dash cam footage of her son's traffic stop. An elderly man passed him a note. "Check the alley behind 4th and Main. Camera catches everything." Westbrook's silence was breaking. Ela's name became more than a tragedy. It became a rallying cry. Her patients, neighbors, even strangers came forward. Not with anger, with information. And the more the truth leaked, the more desperate the department became. One night, a social worker appeared at Marcus's door with 2 officers behind her. "We've received reports," she said, "about your fitness to care for your daughter." CPS was opening a case. They took Zora the next day. First, they took his wife. Now they'd taken his child. But they didn't understand. They weren't breaking him. They were forging something far more dangerous. It happened in a dim back office, deep in a building no badge had touched. Detective Whitaker thought he was meeting a nervous business owner, just another man looking to pay for protection. He didn't know the walls had ears, cameras tucked behind vents, microphones under the desk. Marcus sat across from him, calm as ever, playing the part. $5,000 a month, Whitaker said casually. "Keeps your place clean. Competitors disappear. Trouble never finds you." And then it came, unscripted, venomous. "Your wife?" Whitaker sneered. "She got brave. Brave people make mistakes." He leaned in, voice low, cold. "She begged me, not for herself, for the baby." Marcus didn't move, not a blink, not a breath. Because he had the only thing more dangerous than a gun, a confession, and it was all on tape. Justice doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. And this whisper was about to shake the walls. The headlines came fast and hard. "Veteran exposes police corruption." "Whistleblower footage sparks federal investigation." And there in every story was Ila's name, no longer as a victim, but as the woman whose quiet strength lit the fuse. Federal agents descended on Westbrook. Indictments followed. Officers resigned. Whitaker was arrested, tried, convicted. The body cam footage, the one they said didn't exist, played in court for all to see. Ela holding a bottle, not a weapon. The jury didn't need long. Marcus didn't celebrate. He sat in the back of the courtroom, Zora on his lap, her tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb. The war was over, but the wounds ran deep. With the settlement, he founded the Ila Cole Foundation, dedicated to police accountability and community justice. The same department that tried to destroy him now bore her name etched on its stone walls, repurposed as a place for healing, for truth. 1 year to the day after her death, Marcus stood beside her grave, sunlight warming his shoulders, Zora holding wildflowers. "Your mama," he told her gently, "was the bravest soul I ever knew." He didn't just bury a wife, he built a legacy. And in that legacy, Ila lived on.